You didn't love her. I know that's hard to hear. I know your chest just tightened. I know you're already preparing to argue with me, to defend what you felt, to insist that what you had was real. But stay with me. Because what if I told you that the thing keeping you up at night, the thing making you check her social media at 2 a.m., the thing that feels like your ribs are cracking every time you remember her laugh? What if that isn't love at all? Here's the brutal truth most people won't tell you. Real love and toxic attachment feel almost identical in the beginning. The racing heart, the obsessive thoughts, the sense that this person has become the center of your universe. But they lead to vastly different places. Love leads to growth, to peace, to becoming a better version of yourself. Attachment? In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through 6 indicators that what you experienced wasn't love, it was attachment. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. This might sting, but sometimes the wound needs to be opened before it can finally heal. Let's begin. Indicator number 1. You fell fast, too fast, when instant connection was actually instant desperation. Think back to the beginning. How quickly did you decide she was the one? A week? 2 weeks? Did you find yourself planning a future before you'd even learned her middle name? If you fell in love within days or weeks, I need you to ask yourself a very uncomfortable question. What exactly did you fall in love with? You didn't know her yet. You didn't know how she handles conflict. You didn't know what she's like when she's stressed, when she's scared, when she's bored. You didn't know her relationship with her family, her deepest wounds, her patterns in past relationships. So, what did you fall for? I'll tell you, you fell for a projection, an idea, a fantasy you painted onto a stranger because she was attractive and available, and filled a void you didn't want to look at directly. Watch for these signs. You couldn't explain what made her special beyond surface traits. You ignored red flags because you'd already decided she was it. You felt more relief than joy when you were with her, relief that you weren't alone. Your friends expressed concern about how fast things were moving, but you dismissed them, and the intensity felt less like excitement and more like panic. Real love says, I want to learn everything about you, slowly. Attachment says, I need you to be everything for me, immediately. There's a canyon between those 2 sentences, and most people never notice they've fallen in. But here's where it gets more revealing. The next indicator is about what happened when she wasn't around, and the answer might disturb you. Indicator number 2. Her absence created panic, not peace. When missing her was actually fear of yourself. Answer this honestly. When she wasn't with you, when she was at work, with friends, traveling, simply living her life, how did you feel? Did you feel calm, secure, happy for her? Did you use that time to invest in yourself, your hobbies, your own friendships? Or did you feel anxious? Did your mind race with questions about what she was doing, who she was with, whether she was thinking about you? Did her silence feel like a threat? Did every hour without a text feel like evidence that something was wrong? Because here's the truth about love. It's secure. Real love trusts. Real love doesn't need constant reassurance. Real love can hold space for 2 people to have separate lives and come back together even stronger. But attachment panics the moment the other person is out of sight. It fills the gaps with worst-case scenarios. It needs constant contact, not because it enjoys communication, but because silence feels like abandonment. Here's what to watch for. You couldn't relax when she wasn't reachable. Her social plans without you triggered anxiety, jealousy, or resentment. You found yourself inventing reasons to text her, not because you had something to say, but because you needed to feel connected. You felt more in love when you were slightly worried about the relationship than when things were stable. And being alone, truly alone, without distraction, felt unbearable. The brutal question, if you stripped away the fear of losing her, how much love would remain? For many men, the answer is almost nothing. What felt like passion was actually panic. What felt like devotion was actually desperation. Real love lets her live. Attachment holds its breath until she returns. Speaking of which, the next indicator is about what happened inside the relationship itself, and it might explain why things felt so exhausting. Indicator number 3. You lost yourself to keep her when compromise became complete erasure. This one cuts deep, but it needs to. Relationships require compromise. That's healthy. That's normal. You adjust, you negotiate, you meet in the middle on things that don't fundamentally matter. But there's a difference between compromising your preferences and sacrificing your identity. When you were with her, did you feel like a better version of yourself? Or did you feel like a smaller version? Did she expand your world, or did you shrink yours to fit into hers? Be honest. Did you stop seeing friends because she didn't like them, or because you sensed she didn't like them and you didn't want to deal with the tension? Did you abandon hobbies because she thought they were boring or childish? Did you find yourself agreeing with opinions you didn't actually hold, just to avoid conflict? Did your music change, your clothes change, your goals change, all bending toward her preferences, her vision, her life? That's not compromise. That's disappearance. I spoke to a man once, I'll call him Mark, who didn't recognize himself by the end of his 3-year relationship. Before her, he played guitar every week with his friends. He trained for half marathons. He had strong opinions about politics, about movies, about the future he wanted. After 3 years, he'd sold the guitar, stopped running, couldn't remember the last time he'd expressed an opinion that wasn't strategically softened to avoid her reaction. He told me, "I thought I was being a good partner. I thought this is what love was, putting her first, always. But here's the thing. There's a difference between putting someone first and erasing yourself entirely. One is love. The other is self-abandonment. And here's the gossip-level truth I've observed. The more you lose yourself, the more attached you become. Because once you've sacrificed everything, your friends, your hobbies, your identity, leaving feels impossible. What would you even go back to? There's nothing left. She became your entire world because you burned down everything else. That's not love binding you. That's sunk cost fallacy wearing a romantic mask. Watch for these signs. You couldn't name what made you you outside of the relationship. You apologized for having needs, preferences, or opinions that differed from hers. Your friends commented that you'd changed, and not in a good way. You felt guilty for wanting time alone, or time for yourself. And when the relationship ended, you didn't know who you were anymore. Real love helps you become more yourself. It expands you. It encourages your growth, your friendships, your individual dreams. Attachment asks you to collapse, to make yourself small, to trade your identity for the illusion of security. And you know what happens when two people lose themselves in each other. The relationship becomes two drowning people clinging together, pulling each other under. But here's where the psychology gets really twisted. The next indicator reveals why the hardest moments might have felt the most like love. And this one is going to flip everything you thought you knew. Indicator the number 4. The chaos felt like passion, when drama was the drug. I need you to think about the most intense moments in that relationship. When did you feel most in love? Was it during quiet mornings, peaceful walks, comfortable silence? Or was it after arguments, during the reconciliation, in the middle of a fight that somehow turned into physical intensity, when you thought you might lose her and then, suddenly, she came back? Because here's a disturbing truth about attachment. It thrives on instability. Real love is calm, secure, almost boring by society's standards. It's knowing someone will be there, without drama, without constant testing, without the emotional roller coaster that Hollywood convinced us is romance. But attachment is addicted to the cycle, the tension, the explosion, the repair, the uncertainty, the jealousy, the desperate reconciliation. The higher the highs, the the lower the lows. And somehow, you convinced yourself that the intensity meant it was real. It wasn't real. It was cortisol and adrenaline creating a chemical addiction. Let me tell you about a pattern I see constantly. A man, let's call him Kevin, described his relationship as passionate. When I asked him to elaborate, he told me about their explosive arguments, their tearful makeups, the nights they'd scream at each other, and then couldn't keep their hands off each other. No one has ever made me feel that way, he said. And he was right, no one had. But what he felt wasn't love. It was trauma bonding. It was the cycle of tension and release that mimics addiction at a neurological level. Here's what the research shows. Intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable rewards mixed with punishment, creates the strongest attachments. Slot machines use it, abusers use it, often without realizing it, and chaotic relationships are soaked in it. She pulls away, you panic, she comes back, you feel euphoric, she criticizes you harshly, then suddenly praises you, and the praise hits like a drug. She threatens to leave, you beg, she stays, and you feel more in love than ever. That's not connection, that's a nervous system being hijacked. I've heard whispered confessions about this. Men who admit they actually felt bored during the peaceful periods. Men who subconsciously started conflicts just to feel something. Men who confused the anxiety in their chest with butterflies. Ask yourself these questions. Did the relationship feel most alive during unstable moments? Were the reconciliations more intense than the actual happiness? Did you ever feel addicted to her unpredictability? Were the calm periods somehow less satisfying than the dramatic ones? And when things were stable, did you feel restless, like something was missing? If calm feels empty and chaos feels like passion, you weren't in love. You were in withdrawal between hits. Real love doesn't need drama to feel real. It's not measured by the intensity of your fights, but by the steadiness of your peace. But the pattern doesn't end there. The next indicator is about why you stayed, even when you knew something was wrong. And the answer has nothing to do with her. Indicator number 5. You stayed for who she could be, not who she was when potential became the prison. This is the trap that catches the kindest, most optimistic men, and it holds them for years. You saw something in her. A glimpse, a moment, a version of her that appeared occasionally, usually early on, that made you think, this is who she really is. The rest is just her wounds, her defenses, her fear. If I love her enough, if I'm patient enough, if I stay through the storm, that version will emerge permanently. So you stayed. You stayed through the coldness, waiting for the warmth to return. You stayed through the criticism, remembering when she used to admire you. You stayed through the distance, holding on to memories of closeness. You weren't in love with her. You were in love with her potential. And here's the brutal truth about potential. It's a fantasy. It's a story you tell yourself to justify staying in something that isn't working. It's a future that may never arrive, used to excuse a present that's unacceptable. I talked to a man, I'll call him Daniel, who spent 4 years waiting for his girlfriend to become the woman she was during their first 6 months. The attentive one, the affectionate one, the one who looked at him like he mattered. He made excuses for everything. She's stressed at work. She's dealing with family stuff. She's not in a good place right now, but when things settle... Things never settled, and one day, Daniel realized something devastating. The woman he'd been waiting for didn't exist. That early version wasn't her real self emerging. It was a highlight reel. A honeymoon phase. Possibly even a performance. The woman who showed up every day consistently for years. That was the real her, and he'd wasted years loving a ghost. Here's what I've heard whispered in quiet moments. Men who were addicted to breakthrough moments. A good conversation that gave them hope. A tender night that made them think, she's coming back. These moments were rare, once a month, sometimes less, but they were enough to keep him hooked. It's the same intermittent reinforcement, the same addiction cycle. just dressed up as patience and faith. Watch for these patterns. You found yourself saying, when she, more than she is. You made excuses for consistent behavior, treating it as temporary. You remembered the beginning of the relationship like it was the real version. You believed your love could change her, heal her, unlock her potential. And when people asked why you stayed, your reasons were about who she could be, not who she was. Real love accepts someone as they are. It doesn't require transformation to be worthwhile. Attachment projects a fantasy onto a real person and then resents them for not matching it. You can't love someone into becoming who you need them to be. That's not a relationship. That's a renovation project with a person. But here's the final indicator, and in many ways, it's the most revealing, because it's about what happened after, and it's the clearest test of whether what you felt was love or something much darker. Indicator number 6. The grief feels more like withdrawal than loss, when heartbreak is actually detox. The relationship ends, and now you're in agony. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't focus. Every song reminds you of her. Every place you go together haunts you. You refresh her social media obsessively. You draft texts you'll never send. You bargain with the universe. If I could just talk to her one more time, if I could just understand what went wrong, if I could just get her back. It feels like your heart is being torn apart. But here's the question that might change everything. What exactly are you grieving? Because grief looks different depending on what you lost. When you lose real love, you grieve the person, their specific presence, the future you were building together, the inside jokes, the shared dreams, the particular way they laughed. The grief is about them. But when you lose an attachment, you grieve the function, the role they played, the void they filled, the way they made you feel about yourself. The grief is about you. I want you to sit with this for a moment. Really sit with it. When you think about missing her, what specifically do you miss? Do you miss her as a complete, complex human being with flaws and gifts and irritating habits? Or do you miss what she provided, the validation, the distraction, the feeling of being chosen, the sense that you mattered to someone? A man I'll call Chris helped me understand this difference. After his breakup, he was destroyed, couldn't function, told everyone she was the love of his life. But when I asked him to describe what he missed about her specifically, he struggled. I miss having someone. I miss coming home to someone. I miss the routine. I miss feeling like someone cared about my day. Notice what's missing from that list. Her. There was no, I miss her particular perspective, or I miss the specific way she challenged me, or I miss her voice, her ideas, her presence. He didn't miss her. He missed the position she filled. Anyone sufficiently warm could have occupied it. That's not heartbreak. That's the discomfort of a vacancy. Here's what I've heard whispered, honestly, by men brave enough to admit it. I think I miss the idea of her more than I miss her. I think I was more afraid of being alone than I was in love. I think I held on because starting over felt terrifying, not because she was irreplaceable. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of self-awareness. Ask yourself these questions. Do you miss her specifically, or do you miss having someone? Are you grieving the relationship, or grieving your sense of identity that was wrapped up in it? Does the pain feel more like loss, or more like withdrawal, the agitation, the obsession, the inability to be still? Could your feelings be soothed by a new relationship quickly, or do you need to heal regardless? And if you're honest, were you happier in the relationship, or happier having a relationship? Real heartbreak mourns a person. Attachment withdrawal mourns a supply. And the difference matters because they require completely different healing.